Hello folks, it's David here, and I would just like to take a moment to ask you to go and check out our sponsors Nordvpn. Internet security, very important. I'm sure it's something that you're concerned about as well. Me, I like to know that I'm the person in control of my data. I live on my phone, and the amount of stuff I do on it, from banking to documents to private messaging, I need to know is secure. We all know that there are bad people out there who will come in and try and get our details and try and spend our money for us. NordVPN prevents that, especially if you're using public Wi-Fi's or you're using Wi-Fi's away from your home. If you use NordVPN, you are safe and protected. It also allows you to take short holidays to places if that's ever required. It's a brilliant product. I use it every day and highly recommend it. And you can get a tremendous offer if you go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand. That's nordvpn.com/heart and hand, or use the code heart and hand to get up to 70% off your NordVPN plan. You'll also get one additional month for free. Risk-free with Nord. It's 30-day money back guarantee. So all you need to do if you don't like it is just say nope, and you'll get your money back. So go and check them out. As I say, it's very important. You'll get peace of mind. Go to nordvpn.com/heart and hand.
Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week and the final extra show of the season. My name is Cammy and I don't think I get a better panel of guests than this. First of all, Mr. Martyn Ramsey. Martyn, welcome to Extra this week, and a very interesting one to be able to try and talk about because it's been a bit of a quiet week, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, the full gamut of human emotions to get through, Cammy. Good to be on as always.
Yeah, we will discuss which stage in the kind of grief process that we're at as well. And listen, it doesn't get much bigger than this, Mr. David Edgar.
Yeah, hello everyone. Not the pod we wanted to be doing today, but it is what it is. And as you mentioned there, you move through trying to push towards acceptance, with still tinged with a lot of anger about the way that supporters were treated at the match, and obviously the huge disappointment of falling short.
Yeah, and we will obviously get into the kind of various different aspects of that. I am still in Spain. I'm not yet back in the UK. I am just in the outskirts of Alicante. Martyn arrived home this morning, and David, you're back in Costa del Kilwinning. Boys, we have to talk about the game. I don't think there's any other way around it. I think we went into this final, David, very different flavour to me rather than Manchester in 2008, where we had a deserved sense of confidence. You've rightly said on shows previously that we navigated this journey through to the final on merit, on great performances, on fantastic results, both home and away. That wasn't due to a lucky red card or a last-minute penalty or some such thing. We got into kick-off on Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and I was the same as you, and I think that there was a tangible air in Seville of we were here and we were here to do a job. It wasn't just a case of we were just happy to be at the party.
No, definitely, and I think that as you say, it had been earned on the run. And look, if you just look at the result, 1-1 was 5-4 in penalties. It was justified. That's how close Rangers came to it. However, I think that in terms of the setup, I did no complaints about the team the manager went with, what brought him to the dance. There was the worry about the lack of a striker, and it did hurt us at times. You think how different it would have been, one of many, if Alfie had been available, for example. But I think that you did have to factor in the heat in the way that the team play, and I think you saw that with both teams. And it was a factor in terms of, not that it favoured one side or the other, I don't want to say that, but just that both sides had to pick and choose their moments. What I think was clear was, first of all, Rangers were nervous. Frankfurt were nervous, incidentally. And there were periods in the game where they were scrappy. And both sides, I think, you have to take into account that when we're used to watching European finals, certainly the last few years, the teams that get there tend to have a lot of experience of being at this sort of exalted air level. And neither of these two teams did. And they knew it was such a big opportunity for both. So there were nerves in the air. From a Rangers point of view, I think in the first half in particular, that led to an over-caution. We were very worried about Frankfurt in a transition. If we lost possession in the middle of the park, Frankfurt are pretty devastating on the counter. And that's what got them here. If you watch the matches against Barca and West Ham, that if there was a mistake in the middle of the park, they are terrific at seizing on it and within a couple of quick passes being in your goal. And I think Rangers were very wary of that in the first half in particular, which meant that we tended to go long a lot, but Connor Goldson's passing wasn't as accurate as it usually is. James Tavernier wasn't having his best games in terms of being able to collect it again, because I think there was the worry about Kostic, who is, by far Frankfurt's star man. So I think what that led to was a very cagey match. And if you look at a lot of the chances in the first half, either way, they were really due to either a set piece or a mistake. And both sides, I think, were very conscious that would lead to, and of course, both goals you look at and defensively could have been prevented. So I think that sense of occasion and playing perhaps the occasion rather than the match itself was a shared experience for both the sides, and I think that it meant to, in our terms, not quite playing with the same direct aggression as we have in previous matches.
I think that's totally fair. I completely agree with the sentiment that the occasion. I don't want to say it was too much. I don't think that's fair, because it feels a lot.
If it was too much, they'd have got battered, right? I mean,
exactly, and that's exactly it. I mean, the scenario in terms of how it played out and how you got there, I mean, is fag paper thin, and as far as I'm concerned. But Martyn, I'm kind of keen to get your thoughts on this, because I think the way how the game unfolded, I think, exactly as David said, I think that you saw nerves to begin with. Then I think the fatigue started to set in terms of obviously playing in some crazy temperatures at times. And it just felt like, as you say, it felt very much like a goal could win the game. And when we scored with 30 minutes left to play, I just thought at that point, could we give ourselves a lift? And I mean that even from the three of us being in the stands, you knew that the feeling at the beginning of the game was nervousness from the stands. The fans, we probably could have heard a far more raucous Ibrox had we been playing Frankfurt there. But at this point, it just felt like as if we could have moved on to a level as well. And as David just said there, it was sloppiness in terms of the way how we conceded the goal. Equally, it was a toss of a coin, I think, in terms of how we got to that 90 minutes without someone making another mistake, which could have led to a winner.
Yeah, I mean, both goals were sloppy. I think that's probably fair. I can't have been the only one, and I said it to people around me, and we all kind of agreed at the start of that second half that this feels like a first goal's the winner type of affair. Because of that caginess that David mentioned, a lot of factors that David's mentioned as well as to why that was. I don't think it was a huge surprise. As much as that first half was torturous, and it was, the whole thing actually was not an enjoyable experience for most, because it was so nervous, and it was just sitting there looking at us. We could almost touch it, and it just felt like if we're staying in the game, just we talked about this all day. Stay in the game. 0-0 half time's fine. Get to that hour mark or whatever, and we'd hope to see maybe Ramsey or Roof or both, and go. We got that gift. Aribo took it so well. The best reaction I've ever been involved in, the best crowd I've ever been involved in, limbs, as the kids say, the best 10 minutes I think I can remember following Rangers anywhere. And you know me, I'm not the most positive in game, but I felt we could see it out, because I just had that feeling of First mistake will cost it. The first goal's the winner. And I suppose the more detached, neutral observer of the season wouldn't have been too surprised to see us lose a goal like that, because it's the kind of thing we've been doing all season. But as you said, Cammy, there's not another mistake in it. There's not another huge chance or certainly huge moment that decides the game, and that state of play, that tension between leaving ourselves too exposed, which I think was the overall feeling in the match. We knew how good a counter-attacking side they were. That's why they're here. That performance in the Nou Camp, for example, devastating. They played very well on Tav and Kent, which kind of nullified our maybe natural aggression to go out and grab this final. So I think both things, and the heat and the general kind of tension, played its part. Extra time, I thought, with a better team, but I still don't think we were brave enough to go and grab it, to go and actually take the opportunity. And I think that was the feeling. Other than those 10 minutes post goal, it was just this feeling of we're not seeing this Rangers team at their best. Some key players put in the worst performance I've seen for some time. This wasn't them at their best. Now, again, we talked about this in advance as well. Did we need that Ibrox thing? Maybe not even that Ibrox thing, but that match situation thing where we went to Ibrox in those last two games behind, but not far behind. So we had to be positive. We had to go and grab it at appropriate moments, and that Leipzig performance was controlled aggression, smart play. But there was just this kind of will, and the fans had it as well. We were all kind of joined by this kind of positive will because we were slightly behind. Finals obviously not like that. And I think we were all gripped by we all froze, fans and players.
Yeah, I think
David, I want to.
Sorry, Cammy, if you watch the game back, just before you say, if you watch the game back, see after see after Frankfurt score, both the teams then retreated straight back into that. We are not conceding. So we will go to extra time, and again, it's that both sides, I think, had a fear of losing that was higher than the sense of winning that they'd had on the way to the
and that's
tournament.
A disappointment, isn't it, Davey? That was my overall disappointment. If Rangers had run themselves ragged and been braver and bolder and tried to seize the day and got caught by a better team, it would have hurt. Of course it would, and especially if the manner of the winning goal would be, I don't know, late on or whatever, we would have been devastated. But I think there's just an overall sense that we didn't give all. This wasn't the best version of this Rangers team in Europe at the crucial moment, and that's the regret. That's the sense of kind of emptiness that we have no idea when we'll be back here.
No, and I think experience plays a huge part in that. Yeah, I think
of course it does.
I do, and I really do, because let's face it, it's Liverpool, Real Madrid in the Champions League final, both of whom are filled with players who've played at that, and both of whom are filled with players who can reasonably expect to play in it again, and they have supporters who are there who can reasonably expect that they will see more European finals. Neither of these two teams could, and if there's a Eintracht Frankfurt podcast, trust me, if the penalty shootout goes the other way, they are having the exact same conversation that we are having right now, because it was that type of game. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones. If you lose, you're always a bit frustrated. Could player X have played better? I agree with you. I don't think certain players who are huge players for us played particularly well. I thought Tav had a very poor match by his own standards. Defensively, it was fine, but in terms of his attacking play, he just couldn't get his touch. Wasn't on. Kent was marked at the game because they had three on him constantly, and unfortunately we didn't have the forward line that was able to take advantage of the extra space afforded on the other side.
Actually, was the only outfield player that performed the way, with the confidence and the positivity that he has shown throughout.
I thought.
I think when you look at where they clearly did their homework. There's no doubt about that. Frankfurt did not fluke their way to this final by any stretch of the imagination, but the kept us to be able to try and hit long balls. And then when you're been able to see Kent, as you say, with the lack of space, he had to work hard to be able to generate anything he could get out at the back of that in order to be able to try and penetrate fully. I think there was a dip in performances across the board, which is a shame because, listen, do you know what? Play that game again next week and maybe we see a totally different outcome with the same starting personnel. But one thing that I do want to kind of touch on within that setup, as well as talking about where we saw the range of substitutions being able to come in, because I think, as again, like you say, anyone who was there and anyone who realised just how hot it was on the ground would have seen that players were starting to the fatigue was setting in. The problem with that then becomes that you struggle to be able to justify when you can't get solid performances out of people, but therefore others are tired. We start to see players going down with cramp. But shy of a good Scotterfield chance, which I think he had not long after he came on in extra time, there is obviously the chance that people have been talking about, which is the Ryan Kent shot saved at point blank. Angles would seem to suggest that the ball that came in from Kamar Roof, who had played a grand total of about 60 seconds by this point, I think, that the ball was out of play. So I think likely it goes to a VAR appeal. That's about it. But one of the things I want to talk to you about, and I'll put this to David as well, was I think that it's fair to say, because we knew that Roof wasn't fit, we knew that he wasn't going to start. There was obviously a lot of kind of conversation go out the course of the day about whether or not he would start, and it turned out to be the case, and he was only going to be able to make a fleeting appearance based on being able to come on as a penalty taker, which is probably the right thing to do at the time. I don't think we can look back at that and say that it wasn't fair, because I don't think he's anywhere near fit, and we will talk about that as we talk about the Scottish Cup final. David, I suppose we need to kind of look at this pragmatically and say, would you have picked any other penalty takers to be able to be in your top five? Because there obviously will be a focus on the miss Aaron Ramsey had, but I actually think when you look at all of the penalties, 9 out of 10 of them are pretty exceptional penalties. Yeah. I can't create the energy to blame Ramsey. I think that it was a poor penalty, and I understand people saying that, but we know that he's come on to take that penalty. So has Roof. There's no doubt around that. They just couldn't have made an impact elsewhere.
It's a difficult one because of the way that the whole Aaron Ramsey move has worked out or has not. I think firstly you need to separate. Had Aaron Ramsey scored that penalty, it still wouldn't have been a successful signing, because the fact that he wasn't available for whatever reason to be picked to start this match of all matches, tells you that it hasn't worked out. Because when Aaron Ramsey arrives in January, if you'd said we'd a major final, 2 major finals in January, in May, you would expect him to be first name in the team sheet stuff. So that's been the story of it. Just cameos, mostly in matches that were of little importance, and the signing has been a bad signing. So it's separate though from the penalty. I'm of the school at any penalty shootout that if you've got the cojones to hold your hand up and say I'll go and hit one, especially in the first 5 before you're made to do it. Nobody deliberately misses. Nobody wants that feeling. Nobody wants to know that they've cost a club and themselves a chance of it. So I think that being angry at somebody because they missed a penalty is not fair, right? It happens. It happens in every penalty shootout. Somebody has to, and somebody does. And therefore, I don't think that criticism of him for missing the penalty is fair. Criticism of the signing is fair because it hasn't worked, and that's how you get judged. And I was excited when he came in. You look at the track record, you look at the level that we play at mostly, but it hasn't worked at all. And it's unfortunate. This is, of course, now what you'll be remembered for as a Ranger. But I'm not angry at him. Disappointed, sure, but I don't think you can blame someone for. You can have regret for it. Same with the Goldson situation. You can have regret for it, for the mistake, but they didn't do it deliberately, and I think to blame them for it is a little bit harsh. But 9 of the penalties were absolutely top. I mean, you could have had McLaughlin in there with McGregor, and I'm not sure they're saving any of those 5 Frankfurt penalties, unfortunately. It's a cliche, but Germans at penalty kicks, but it's because they're top drawer at them. German sides they are, and 1,000 ifs and buts coming out of this game. One being, had Ramsey scored that, then we were getting to a stage where they had to miss, they had to score to avoid losing, and that would have been an extra pressure which we were never able to put on them. So there's that. But in terms of Roof, if I have one regret, Cammy, I would have liked to have seen him on 10 minutes earlier, because when he came on, they were out on their feet. And even in those couple of minutes, as you say, he created the chance. The Kent chance, he should score, but it's a wonder save. Both can be true. He still should have scored, but it's still, even at that, a tremendous save by a top-drawer goalkeeper. However, you're right, it would have been ruled out. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I haven't seen it back and saw the angles that they had. I think it would have been ruled out for the ball going out of play. I'm not sure that would have been any better, to be honest with you. I'm not sure had we scored.
I think it would have been worse.
Yeah, I think
that's heart attack stuff. That
if we'd scored, celebrated, and then had VAR ruled it, that might have been worse.
I'll be honest, that was kind of right in line with where I was up in that stand, and I expected that. I kind of expected the flag to go up. I thought it was out. And I mean, Ken's got to take the goalie in with him. I mean, I just don't care. He need that one earlier. His finishing's appalling.
He's a terrible.
It just is. It's beyond. Yeah. And I know he causes in other ways so much grief for opponents, and that's why, of course, he always plays. But it's kind of getting a bit ridiculous now. The Ramsey thing, look, we could have gone home after extra time. Never winning. Never. And
where are you on the Barisic thing? When he seems to have terrible luck just before
a crucial
just before a
game.
Just before a potential penalty shootout is like a really red zone for him, as they say when injuries occur.
Well, I think three times now he's been taken off. Yeah.
Look, listeners might be going, "Yous are terrible. I can't believe you're saying that about him," but 3 times is very unlucky.
Listen, Roberto Baggio's missed a penalty kick. It happens, but they will not. And I'd utterly that Tav free kick at the end, I felt was their last hope, and the crushing disappointment when nothing came from that, because you absolutely knew. And I think that myself and the boys around me, we picked the 5. Don't think we'd have had anyone else. Made sense, but even if it got into sudden death, you knew what was going to happen. Ramsey and Roof earlier, a lot of it was screaming for it. We saw the reaction to Roof. The defence that looked like we could get at them, but we never really did. And all of a sudden, they looked all over the place when Roof was on. And you're right, Dave. He was only a minute before he was kind of causing havoc. Now, we have no idea, genuinely, whether he had more than 5 minutes in him. He hung together big gaffer tape there. But, Ramsey has played the last few weeks. Physically, you would have felt and assumed that he was able to do something in extra time for pretty much the entire period. We've had this debate before. Big games when he started have passed him by. He's looked bright in those first 20 minutes, and then it's gone past him. There's nothing wrong with keeping good ball players till late in the game when it's stretched and defenders are tired. That makes perfect sense to me. I just don't know why we didn't see him earlier. And that's what I mean about being bold. Now, the manager has been bold all the way through here. Usually when we're behind or in trouble, half-time at Ibrox against Dortmund, the 2 second legs when we're behind the 8 ball, you need to be bold then. You no other choice. And that's what will haunt me for a long time, is I just don't think in extra time, when it did feel that we were looking all right, and they were starting to be really, really ragged, that I just don't think we were bold enough and brave enough, and I would have had Ramsey on at the start of that period. Maybe Roof a wee bit later, because clearly he didn't have the legs for more than a kind of handful of minutes of a cameo in there to take a penalty. But you're looking for passes over a ball or players that can do something. That's when you've got to go for it, and we just didn't. And the sign itself, listen, it's the hardest thing in the game. Is to recruit well and get things right. It's always a risk, especially we knew the story. Everyone knows Aaron Ramsey's story. But it was a gamble that broadly made sense with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. And sometimes you got to take those gambles now and again. But it hasn't paid off, and that's football. There's no guarantees with recruitment, even with fit players. They just don't fit the chemistry of a side or whatever. Who knows?
Martyn, let me stick with you then for that point, because I think you've touched a few things there that I was keen to talk about, and I do also want to talk about the Seville experience as well, which I'll come on to in just a second. But I don't think it's unfair to say that based on how you saw that final being played, the route to the final, that Rangers deserve to win it. I think that you've got key injuries that have absolutely given us a severe body blow and decimated, I think, certain opportunities for us to be able to really go out there to express ourselves. And when you miss it in a penalty kick, I think that even, and I saw this even in my own experience speaking to Frankfurt fans after the game, the next day, etc., there was no gloating. There was no, we were all over you, and blah, blah. It was very much, as I say, it was a shootout, and that was just the kind of way it fell. So supposedly what I'm keen to understand from you is, do you feel that this is now, given the coaching experience that you mentioned there, and how we can do effective game management, tie to tie, leg to leg, however you want to be able to walk through it, and if we can crack that nut of solid, consistent recruitment, should a semi-final or a European final be achievable again, say within the next 5 years, in your opinion?
I left Manchester, like I'm sure many of us did, thinking, right, seeing Rangers in the European finals, a big chance. We never really turned up, but never had that much expectation that we would, to be honest. But I will never see this again.
Yeah,
I don't feel that way this time. What I'm definitely confident of is that Rangers being a relative fixture deep into European season, i.e., post Christmas, is absolutely within reach. We've talked a lot that this wasn't an isolated run. This is part of 4 years of European progress and respectability, and just a reputation being completely restored. And so I don't see that ending in Seville. I'd be very disappointed. In fact, that's all you can ever ask for, Cammy. Cup football. I mean, you have to be, like, ourselves and Celtic will rightly expect to be in finals unless we meet each other along the way at home, because we're that much stronger. As much as football, cup football can be capricious, that's a reasonable expectation just because of the strength. We don't have that in Europe. We shouldn't have been there really at all this season. So who can say, just because of the nature of cup football, but a contender, being in there, having a chance, being involved, which is, if we're being honest, all I wanted since I was a kid really was for Rangers just to actually be respected at this table on a consistent basis, not as two runs based in, vodka and a good old British team spirit. That we've got the kind of minimum I kind of demanded as a kind of spoilt teenager. To get to a final again, though, you just need it all to kind of align. I think it will happen. I can't say within the next 5 years, and it might be the conference as well. Good that European football's back to having those three routes. But yeah, it can happen. Whereas after Manchester, I didn't think there was a chance in hell I'd see that again, to be honest. So it's two different things. And I mean, recruitment, Jesus, what a summer we have in front of us in terms of the work that has to be done. I can't say everyone is entirely confident that that's going to be managed well, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
I must admit that I left Manchester in 2008 pretty firm in the conviction that well, I saw my team in a European final. I didn't ever expect to, and I won't do it again. And here we are 14 years later, and I've seen two. So from being 30 years old and absolutely certain I would never see Rangers in a European final, and I was certain. I've now seen them in two. So in terms of can we do it again? Yes, we can. In terms of will we? Martyn's right. Who knows? You can't legislate for it. You can't say for definite. But here's something that I think should come out of, again, to echo Martyn's point, the last 4 years, not just this 1 year, is that I've been guilty, and again, I go back to this a lot, but it's true, child of the 90s, that European football was so painful and so regularly humiliating that I just sort of airbrushed it from mattering to me because I'd had too many boots to the Homos. And even this season, the game against Lyon at Ibrox, we lost 2-0. Lyon were just a level above us. And I said on here, well, what can you expect? Lyon, they're a side that have got a legit shout of winning this, And I've realised through this run that the thing that will prevent us, absolutely categorically will prevent us from reaching it, is the belief that we can't. And I won't do that anymore. I am going to demand from the side that, as Martyn says, you might not win it, you might not reach the final, but you've got to be aiming to. You've got to be aiming. Rangers. Alan McCoy said a thing in his video that he did to build up, where he said Rangers were always a big club. It's just everybody had forgot, and now they're remembering. And I count myself in that because, I knew we were big, but big domestically and big with a big support, big worldwide. Not that, but football's the way it is. We can't compete at that level. Well, that's self-limiting, right? That is. So now, I am going to demand that. Yeah, let's go. Why not? Why can't we beat them? Right? Well, why is it impossible? It absolutely is impossible if we decide it is. And it might be based on the 11 players we have taken on another side's 11, but let's not go into it with that spirit. So, no, as I say, it's probably taken me, after growing up, thinking we could achieve European success, then getting out of my 20s and thinking it's completely gone. It's probably taken me another 20 years. And there was a Euro final in that 20 years, but it's probably taken me up to this 4 years to go, no, hang on here. There's no reason whatsoever that we absolutely shouldn't now just go, oh, well, group stages, that's good. There's X amount of £1 million, couple of away trips, fabulous. We need to start going, right, well, we should get out of this. And then we'll see how the draw goes, the luck of the draw, etc. A tailwind behind us, and you never know. So you can't, as I say, if you're a club like us, if you're a club like Frankfurt, you can't say, I will definitely be back in 4 or 5 years' time. We'll definitely be back next year. You can't, right? That's understandable. But you can certainly say, see when we get into it, let's really push and give it all we've got. And this is if you like, a bit of an admission from me, because I was among the worst for it. That Europe was became just this money making and away trip thing. And this team over the last 4 years has shown, well, actually, no, it doesn't need to be. We should be pushing the side, and we should be gutted if, like last year we went out to Slavia. Now, we know there was circumstances, but that was a missed opportunity. And I'm going to start seeing it as such, and I'm going to start saying, you could have done a bit better there. This particular run, mild regrets about the final, absolutely. Sadness, great deal of sadness that we couldn't get over the line in it. But anger, none. Because on this run, Cammy, we have achieved probably, or certainly possibly, but I would say probably, the greatest single result in our history in Europe, which was beating Dortmund 4-2 in their own backyard. We then had 2 utterly spellbinding nights at Ibrox when we took on Red Star and when we took on Braga. And then we had what, to me, and certainly to a lot of people I've spoken to, was the greatest night in our lifetimes at Ibrox against Leipzig. Now, you can't, I think, be too angry at a side who have given you all of that and then gave us this experience to Seville, which up until we got to the ground was a wonderful experience. What you can do, though, is say, I want more. I want more of this. I want more nights like those 3 nights at Ibrox that I mentioned. I want more nights. I want more trips like this. And I don't think we're being unreasonable to push for that, because for me, we've wasted a lot of years. Obviously not when we were in the lower divisions where it was a pretty dry. I'm talking about, really kind of, 1990 to 2010, or certainly 1996 to 2010. We've wasted a lot of years going, it doesn't matter, we've got Hibs on Sunday. I won't do that anymore.
I want to kind of touch just on that, as you mentioned there, about the experience. Because, listen, I think my reflection now that I've had time to kind of sit and decompress and been able to try and just look back on the experience as a whole, and I mean that from probably half-time against Malmo all the way through to midnight, whenever it was we finished in Seville on Wednesday, is that it's been a hell of a run. You've hit the nail on the head perfectly, David, when you're mentioning about the nights that we've had, the togetherness that we've had. And I think that was exemplified when you saw our travelling support. Over 100,000 were able to make the trip to Seville from all around the world, been able to come over. Run up to the final had suggested, that there would be closures of bars, restaurants. All turned out to be total nonsense, probably fueled in rumours created by people who, let's face it, are not friends of the club. Seville as a host city, I thought was tremendous. Absolutely wonderful experience across the board. Bars, restaurants, just small drink stands. Everybody was well looked after. However, once you got to the stadium, it became a very different story. Now, for anyone who wasn't aware of this, in order to gain access to the stadium on Wednesday night, you had an e-ticket downloaded via the UEFA app, and the setup was that you were to attend the stadium with your app. It didn't have anything on it other than just your seat designation, but you wouldn't get access into the stadium until you were met by a steward who would then activate the ticket via Bluetooth, and then you would then be able to go in via turnstile. Now, take that scenario, plus also people likely travelling home immediately after the game. You would get to the ground, you'd have to show your ticket, but also you were given quite a scrutinous search, I think is probably fair to say. Everyone getting into the stadium were separated into queues of males and females, given a search, but anything on them, I would say, bigger than your phone could possibly have, or chunkier than that, was immediately going straight into the bin, including phone chargers, suntan lotions. I saw people who, as I say, they had bottles of water, etc., taken off, and I would expect that. That's not a problem. We'd also started to hear rumours that we had arranged a display of our own, but that was then taken down apparently by the Spanish police. And David, I'll come back to you on this as well, because I think the most concerning thing, more than anything else that happened in this, was during the game, from when I got into the stadium itself, the kiosk queues were a complete shambles, a complete farce. And part of me thought this potentially could be a problem. I thought that could have been flashpoints, because it became pretty unruly. People before the game were coming in wanting to try and get a drink, whether it was zero alcohol beer, water, soft drinks, whatever. Little did I know that it would take out of water, and that then led to people having to go into the toilet and use, basically water out of the tap, trying to find containers, being able to try and use it from there. There was serious dehydration risks, and although the game kicked off at 8 o'clock UK time, it was still, I would say, mid-20 degrees within the stadium itself, which has no cover. There was serious problems with this. Now, I know that the club have already complained back to UEFA to explain how this shambles could happen in 2022. But I honestly thought it was absolutely shocking. When we get to the point that the Rangers doctor has to go into the crowd to be able to try and help someone due to potential dehydration issues, David, it is just a complete farce. It was dangerous, and I mean really dangerous in some circumstances.
Yeah, it was. Firstly, there's been a lot of talk from back home about that the fans were quiet, and there's a few factors for that. First was nervousness, as Martyn says. But the other one was, if you weren't in the stadium, I'm really not sure you can quite get just how bad it was, the whole circumstance, because it wasn't just what you saw in the stadium, folks. It was the few hours before it. First of all, fans were told specifically items that they couldn't take, which was fine. People had looked at the rules and they were turning up. Now, obviously, anybody who's turning up with, a slab of lagers deserves to have it confiscated off them, but that didn't happen. So we were told to get there early. There was going to be a lot of searches involved, and there really were, and they started miles away from the ground. So you were forced to walk round to certain points. You couldn't just go up to the stadium and find your section. This, despite the fact, we were told this was for segregation, despite the fact that the fans walked up to the stadium footprint together, and a lot of fans were sitting in the same sections together because there's a lot of neutral ticket sections. So that seemed like bollocks. But anyway, so you get there, then there are obviously queues to go through each one. Then when you get up to the stadium, the Spanish police, the searches were... Well, I think, Martyn, it was you that said to me you had to phone your wife and tell her that you just committed adultery because the guy was that forward with you.
Close, yeah.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I think Martyn got touched in his special place, and he wasn't the only one. So you got up there, and you were being asked to show your ticket like 4 times along, and maybe a kind of an 800-yard stretch, being stopped like 4 times for it. So we got there. And the searches they were taking off people's hats and looking under them. Now, what they think you kind of stashed under a baseball cap is beyond a bit of paper, maybe, that might be fashioned into a weapon. And then they're removing things like battery packs from people, despite being told you need to make sure your phone is charged and that battery packs are allowed. They did remove AirPods from people, which, expensive things that people own and are quite common to carry, but they were removing them, and you were told you either for me, I had mine. I took all my stuff out my pockets, stuck it in my hat, and put my AirPods under my phone, and moved to a guy who didn't look quite as militarily aggressive as some of the other Spanish cops, and luckily got in. Then once we got into the ground after all that, and remember, we're walking about in the sun. As Cammy said, at this point, the sun's 33, 34 degrees easy. Probably a bit hotter, actually, especially with all the bodies there. Get into the ground, and this is when the lies from, Seville, they said, we had plenty of water ordered and fans were assaulting the kiosks, so we had to close them. That's all lies, all bollocks. I was in the stadium at 6:20. The section I was in, which held 10,000 people, had 1 kiosk open and another 5. There was 6 in total. 5 were closed. People approached the stewards and asked, what time will these other kiosks be opening? And they said they won't be. Right, there's no staff, they won't be opening. So you need to get in the queue. The queue was well over 2 hours, and I'm not exaggerating that. It was well over 2 hours if you wanted water. Never mind food, if you wanted water. So by the time I got up to it, they were out of water. So I was lucky. I was able to buy some juice, but other people weren't. Then they were completely out of everything, any liquids whatsoever. So people then had to start drinking the water, as you say, from the taps in the toilet, which you're always told don't drink Spanish water, but apparently all of a sudden it was fine to drink. And then the taps were turned off. Now, Seville saying, oh no, the system malfunctioned. It's bollocks. There were a guy in orange maintenance uniforms going into toilets and turning the water off. People were passing out. There were people lying dehydrated. Now, in terms of guys saying, well, you didn't sing as much as we would have if we'd been there, or maybe not. Okay. Although where I was fortunate, there was plenty of singing in the section I was in. But I mean, this is my voice like a day later. So maybe we weren't, but it is quite upsetting when you see people like adults passing out from dehydration, stumbling and confused and unable to answer questions, and they've got kids with them who are in tears. When you see guys panicking because they're diabetic and people have been trying to take their insulin off them, they tried to remove medication from supporters going into the ground. It is a bit upsetting, and it is a bit hard when you see a guy stumble, and the stadium is very steep. When you see a guy stumble, come to, is the only word for it, bleeding, and then it's difficult to then turn around and go, right lads, lusty chorus of 10 German bombers. So I understand that there's disappointment from people back home, but trust me, if you were in there, you would realise it was horrendous. If you treated dogs the way that the supporters were treated over there, then you would be done by the RSPCA. And it was clearly the Rangers fans who were getting it worse, because yes, the Germans got in with a display. Yes, they let them in with a display. They wouldn't let us in. I had a flag that wasn't on a pole and it was confiscated. So this pish from UEFA about, the Rangers, they had plastic flags and you guys had them in bamboo. No, that's bollocks. Because I just had it draped and it was taken off me. So it was inhuman. I'm very angry, and of course straight away you see the cover-up begin, because it's easier to blame supporters. But there were people in there for 6 hours in 30-degree plus heat, exposed in the sun with no water. That is inhuman. That is just absolute disgraceful, and they're incredibly lucky that there weren't fatalities, because if there were, UEFA would have blood on their hands.
Martyn, I mean, obviously David has expressed, and you can hear the anger in his voice.
I'm fucking raging, Cammy. I'll be quite honest, because as I say, I saw one wee boy sitting in tears because his dad passed out, and a copper come over and basically just stood over them, didn't do anything. The wee boy's terrified. Rangers fans approached to help the wee boy, and the coppers told them to get away with the batons drawn. I honestly can't. You don't treat human beings in that way.
I totally agree, but I think one point I want to be able to try and make on that, and I'm a big believer in, self-praise is no praise at all. But I think when you consider those circumstances, and again, you can hear, Martyn, the anger in David's voice when he's been able to try and talk about it. You put people who, as I say, have been drinking all day, they're seeing these circumstances, and the fact that there wasn't a reaction to that, I think also emulates what was my own particular experience having arrived in Seville on Tuesday night. Going out, experiencing everything as well. There was, I think, a really enjoyable atmosphere. I didn't feel any sense of problems at all. And despite those horrendous conditions at the stadium, I do believe that the support at the stadium do need to be able to be given a lot of credit for the fact that there wasn't serious issues with this. Anyone who's ever dealt with Spanish police, and I have, in previous occasions, been away with Rangers before, seen firsthand the zero tolerance from Spanish coppers. They have nowhere near our level of preventative measures. As soon as they can crack out the baton, they will. But I think we need to give 100,000 plus Bears tremendous credit for being able to go over there, have a really enjoyable atmosphere with the Frankfurt fans, conduct ourselves appropriately, not be provoked by these incidents at the stadiums and what was a total shambles in terms of arrangements. Everyone went there, hopefully all now returning safe as well. And that, I think, for me, is why it does feel different to Manchester, because I went over there and had a really enjoyable experience outside the 120-odd minutes of the game. And I think that we will rightly be praised for the fact that, we've got a huge travelling support that, as David mentioned earlier on, and Alan McCoist has mentioned, is hand in hand with a club the size of ours.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Cammy. I forgot what the question was, to be honest. The day itself was just joyous, genuinely. And with Manchester in mind, I think it was ridiculous to have concerns. Clearly the club did, given those entertaining videos early in the week. But it was absolutely superb. Other than an incident with Frankfurt fans near a pub, I think, in the kind of run up to the game. And yeah, everyone deserves praise. You shouldn't really need praise to just behave yourself like a normal human being during the day. But it was great. It was a day that will live with me for a long time. Enjoying that experience with you guys, and my dad was over from America, other people from all around the world, just kind of catching up. It was kind of what football should be. And as David's mentioned, the match experience was very, very different. It did get quite hairy where I was, I'll be honest. Near that kiosk, I didn't see any assaults or anything like that, but it was not happy for understandable reasons. This was between 7 and 8 local time, when the one out of the 3 or 4 kiosks that was open was then the word was getting back that they were running out of just pretty much anything. They were crisps though, just what you need, and that kind of heat is a salty snack. But so the tensions were getting high, and yes, I think that the fans inside the stadium in those conditions do deserve praise for that understandable anger, not to boil over into something else. It just changed. The whole mood, and maybe this is just me projecting, I appreciate that, but it just kind of changed as we started to walk up, because you're just gripped by tension all of a sudden. It's been a kind of carnival fortnight since Leipzig. Everyone's just been floating about, and that's what during the day was like. But when you get to kind of 4 or 5 o'clock, it's right, well, you just kind of make our way up. You were kind of joking that life was a lot easier when Gothenburg pumped us out in August. You don't have to worry about these kind of things, but maybe that there was just that kind of collective tension, and then getting in was not as easy as it really should be for one of the pinnacles of the European football season. You would expect things to run like absolute clockwork, and this is what happened when a football club is rewarded for its team success in that competition rather than the actual facilities that they have. And look, the allocation thing, I think maybe UEFA got it too tight for that, because most Europa League finals don't sell out. We sometimes fool ourselves into thinking that loads of clubs have the support that we do. They don't. It's not normal. So in an ordinary year, the actual allocation side of it would have been fine, but the handling of it, I think there's, going back to David's question or point about the chargers and things, the battery packs, they are banned, I think, in Spain. So for the police, that's the norm to remove those. Now, you're right, though, UEFA had an arrangement in place that those would be allowed, and they just ignored that. And I have to laugh, for those of us on that upper tier, David, do they think we're Tom Brady or something? I mean, who is reaching the pitch from up there?
Yeah, and I always find it funny that they take the bottle cap off you in case you throw that, but the full bottle of juice, which I think in terms of aerodynamics would have a far bigger chance of landing on the pitch. Look, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute disgrace, and nothing will be done. People are saying, well, the club can do this, or nothing will be done. Nothing is ever done with British, and I use that term advisedly, when it's British fans in Europe, because UEFA don't care, the authorities don't care, and nothing will be done. It never will be. And people could die. That's the thing. People, well, will it stop when people die? Is that what they want? They won't care. They'll apologise. They'll do what UEFA have done. They'll put out a bland apology statement, or they'll do what Seville have done and tell a lie, and then they'll all move on, and they will not give a toss. And that's another reason why I'm angry, because it doesn't go anywhere. It's absolutely disgraceful. To Cammy's point, just time's getting to us now, and just before we wrap up, you're right. You don't want to say, "Oh, well done, we behaved," because that's what we should do. But even so, the palpable disappointment from certain quarters in Scotland that Rangers fans hadn't burnt down cathedrals, I think tells you a lot.
Yeah, it's there.
To no use.
Oh, the stories were already written, weren't they? About civilians. That headline must have been ready to go in about 20 papers. And the fact is, Rangers fans went, had a party, lost disappointingly, were treated like animals and kept their dignity, and then we left. That's exactly what happened. So, the Rangers fans, we didn't give them a story, and for that, well done. Because honestly, if I had kicked off at that stadium, then I'm not sure I could sit here in judgment of anybody who lost the plot, because, as I say, there were some very upsetting. I've never seen anything like that following Rangers. My first European ties in the 90s, my first European away day. I've never seen anything like that.
Gents, this has all been very cathartic, and hopefully people listening have probably gone through, and I'm sure they've all been through the same ranges of emotions as us, and conscious of time, and more importantly, allowing yourselves the opportunity to rebuild the energy for what is obviously a massive game for us now in the Scottish Cup final on Saturday at 4 o'clock. Martyn, just briefly, obviously, we can't be blasé about these things. We did have our eyes on bigger prizes, so I understand why people are now kind of saying this feels like a bit of a consolation, but we have to be able to try and regroup. I think we have to look at this now has been an opportunity to put what has been a domestic cup hoodoo in recent times behind us. And, I lived through in West Lothian, I lived through close to Edinburgh Way. I know plenty of Hearts fans. They are delighted that we went the full distance on Wednesday. They are very, very much up for this. We are going to have a very tough game on Saturday afternoon.
Well, conditions and circumstances make that tough. I'm not sure by the football itself being tough. It's what we can do. It's that internal challenge, which has been this season in a nutshell, to be honest. I'm sure when I get to Hampden, the juices will start flowing and you start getting back into it, because, as I'm sure David's about to say, we have not been troubling trophy engravers. They've not been doing overtime on our watch of late. So
correct. This idea of, I don't care about Scotland. Well, I do. Because I've not seen enough silverweight.
Oh, massively.
Yeah, so
but I think it's more for this. It's been a weird season.
It has,
and it's felt overwhelming at times. Actually, just the kind of constant, never-ending tension, ups and downs, pretty much since Malmo. But for what this team have given us, those moments that they've given us, to walk away with nothing, this season would be pretty. It would feel pretty unfair, although sport isn't unfair. You do get what you deserve ultimately. So I think when push comes to shove, and when the warm up's done and they're back in that room, whomever is tasked with starting that game, and I certainly don't expect it to be the same 11 that started on Wednesday, that there will be that drive to get something from this season, because they deserve it, or they should deserve it, and if they want it, they will. I mean, that's ultimately it. It's not about us, Cammy. It's about us, and being able to pick ourselves up another emotional day today, with Jimmy Bell's funeral. So just so much going on it just seems like the last 2 months has just been constant Rangers stuff, highs and lows, and a big challenge for the manager and the senior pros and the leaders within the dressing room who didn't perform to what the levels that they can do on Wednesday. I have a feeling they'll want to really do it, and I think we'll be all right.
David, you always like to make a habit of agreeing with Martyn when he's right. I take it he's just encapsulated your thoughts there. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, it is ideal for Hearts, but let's be honest, Hearts can't beat Rangers if Rangers play well tomorrow.
Yep.
However, it'll be how's the legs, how's the recovery, how's the head. That'll be the key battle for the manager and for the players. How's the head? And they've got to get back up for it. Rangers fans will go again. We'll dust ourselves down. We'll go to Hampden. We'll be ready for it. I never thought I'd be actually looking forward to going into Hampden for a good fan experience, but it's going to seem like going.
Yeah,
it's going to seem like Tottenham's new ground compared to what we went through on Wednesday. So no,
good to kiosk and buying everything.
Oh, aye. I mean, give me
chucking
chips,
balls or whatever.
Twice.
Water, and I want Capri Sun, and I went, no, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, we haven't won enough to turn our noses up at opportunities to win things lately. That's simple. The team have got to deliver on Saturday. It's very trying circumstances. I mean, they've come back yesterday to then, do the recovery. They've got Jimmy Bell's funeral today, which will be an incredibly emotional experience for so many of them. And then we've got, the cup final on Saturday. So it is draining, but it's gut check time, as they say in the US. It's get your chest out, remember the badge you're wearing, and go and deliver. And then if they do deliver, then I think in times that we will look back on it and say that was a big achievement given the circumstances of it. I'm confident we will. And I'll just finish up with a wee bit of advice to Gio, if I can be so presumptuous: play Loudy.
Yes, it will be very interesting to see what team selection we have put out for us as well. Good luck to Rangers tomorrow in the Scottish Cup final. Safe travels if you're still coming home at this point in time, whenever you're listening to this as well. We'll make sure that we make plenty of noise at Hampden. David will be back with you on Monday with the flagship. This is the last extra show of the season, as we say, so the Scottish Cup review will be happening on Monday's show. Thanks to our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers. And if you'd like to hear more of us, including Martyn's excellent Dominant series, which has been absolutely fantastic over the last number of weeks, please join us at patreon.com/heartandhand. Thank you to David for joining us today.
Pleasure, thank you.
And thank you, Martyn.
Always a joy.
Thanks, folks. Let's get that Scottish Cup secured at Hampden. Speak to you all again soon. Bye-bye.